Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to do our Should You Buy video on the new Argo SRV. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this ship, it's basically a dedicated tugboat in the Star Citizen universe made by Argo, not to be confused with the MPUV, which is another specific ship from the manufacturer Argo Astronomics. Now, the SRV is going for about $130 war bond or $150 using credits. And you may be asking, why the hell is this basically $100 more than the existing Argo? And there are a lot of reasons for that, but the first of which is that the Argo isn't a ship, it is a brand. So the MPUV is a much smaller vessel than the SRV. Not to mention the scope and roles they play are very, very different. Now, it's better to compare this to an entry-level type of profession ship like the Prospector. And when you look at it like that, it makes more sense from a pricing standpoint. The SRV is about 28 meters long, 19 meters wide, and 9 meters tall, which roughly puts it in similar size to a Cutlass, though the Cutlass is a little bit wider, though it is pretty close in size. Now, to compare, the Argo MPUV, if you're still hanging on that comparison, is 9 meters long, 8 meters wide, and 4 meters tall, so you can see there is a drastic difference in scale between these two ships. Now, the SRV has a crew of 1, which is essentially your pilot and tug operator, but you do have the ability to carry 3 more people for a total of 4, which would ideally be the people that you are rescuing from your missions, because there's not a lot of value in bringing spare people along in a vessel like this. Components-wise, you bring a small radar, 2 small computers, and 2 small fuel intakes, along with a medium power plant, a medium cooler, shield generator, fuel tanks, and most importantly, quantum and jump drives. That means that not only can you tow people, but you can end up jumping with them, which is a pretty critical ability to bringing them back to a location that would allow you to be able to refuel or repair their vessels. Now, interestingly enough, the SRV is one of our only vehicles that has no weapons, though it does bring countermeasures along with it, which means that you're either really restricted to operating in safe space or you're really relying on an escort. The documentation does state that it comes with tough armor and shields, though even though the components tend to reflect that, there's not really any ship that is immune to attacks for very long without any ability to fight back, so an escort is basically mandatory with this ship. Now, I don't see details on engines or maneuvering thrusters, but we do see that the ship is coming with a top speed of 200 meters per second, which is faster than I expected, though I do expect to be a baseline with nothing in tow. Now, I do expect you to be able to get up to 200 meters per second with a ship in tow as well, though I fully expect that it's going to require a long time to accelerate up to that speed while towing a ship. The tractor system on this ship is interesting, with it having the max traction Bullock tractor plate that has a tractor beam that seems to deploy from within, which is likely going to help it from taking critical damage when it's not in use. It also has arms that are articulated to allow it to be able to grab oddly shaped items with the tractor, as well as being able to compress and carry cargo below it. Now, the documentation does say that you're able to carry cargo with this ship and states that there is a 10 SCU capacity on the ship, though I do have a hard time finding space interior for this, so my gut says that carrying 10 SCU of cargoes on the ship is achieved via the tractor beam on the bottom, kind of similar to like a hull series ship, but without a physical connection. Now, that does make me wonder how useful this is going to end up being, because if you're engaged, you may need to end up dropping that cargo to be able to escape, or if you're hit with distortion weapons, it may be a scenario where the power plant can't sustain the tractor beam, then the tractor fails and you lose your cargo. Which means for me that I'm looking at cargo ability on this ship purely as a plus benefit and not something you can count on day to day. Basically, I don't think you buy this ship for its cargo ability, but something that can come in handy superfluously. Now, I do wonder how strong this is going to be, and if you can grab vehicles to help to deploy them to friendly locations, talking about the tractor. So whether that be an Ursa or a Tonk, maybe you can help to get them to a spot where they're more effective and utilize the higher speed of the SRV for interesting deployments. Maybe that's a possibility where this becomes helpful, but we need a little bit more information there. Now, the documents do go on to talk about being able to use several SRVs to tow in tandem, basically meaning that you can tow larger ships, and the way that it's written is that I bet they use the extra computers, because they do have 2 medium computers on these ships, to be able to do some sort of linking like quantum jumping is done today. Now, as far as design is concerned, it's familiar for those that know the Argo MPUV of today, but specific to this ship, you also have a cockpit that gives solid visibility with a 180-degree field of view, not to mention an interior that is going to give you space for your passengers, which includes a bathroom, jump seat, multifunction table, and storage for personal items. Now, I don't see a bunk for anybody anywhere, so logging out in this ship shouldn't be an option for the pilot or the newly discovered crew, which means that you're really limited to more shorter range missions and locations with beds to log out when it's time to go, lacking things that you would need to be able to find at different locations. Now, considering the goal of this ship is to return the ships that you're towing to locations that can repair or refuel, I think that makes a certain amount of sense, considering most of those should end up having locations where you can log out and have beds to be able to wake up on your next game session. So that's basically the Argo SRV, but who should buy this ship? Well, the most important note here is that the distinct lack of weaponry means that this ship becomes a very niche player. If you're planning on running a solo vehicle with no support, I don't think this ship is for you. Now, sure, you could go out and run missions and maybe be fine sometimes, but if you continually die as part of these missions, you may end up failing them more than you complete them, which means you may end up seeing reputation starting to take a dive. Now, if you have a warship in tow, that doesn't do you a lot of good either, because they're just purely out of gas. Maybe you could have their turret kind of help you provide some cover fire, but that's a stretch, especially considering I'm guessing maneuverability when towing a vehicle is very much limited. But let's assume that you have the ability to have a fighter cover available, then I think this becomes an invaluable craft for organizations or for those that are wanting to get into this profession, or maybe just doing role-playing. You know, when we start talking about Elite Dangerous, there's a group known as the Fuel Rats who are basically good Samaritans that go out and help those who run dry on fuel. You know, I could see people that want to go out and help others leveraging this ship to go out and just tow them back, especially since you don't end up having to provide them with fuel of your own that costs you credits other than what the SRV itself is going to be using to provide that service. So with that in mind, I think this becomes an interesting alternative to things like Starfarers, Vulcans, Crucibles, and maybe even Reclaimers, because you can pull people or salvage back instead of taking the goods to them. And even at a potentially much lower cost to most of those other ships in regards to the initial purchase price. Now, I think this ship is really for those who want to help others, have a career that's always going to have people in need, especially when ships are less likely to explode and more likely to become disabled, and people want to be able to help them see these situations through and get their ships back and basically not have to go through the death of a spaceman and reclaiming ships and those types of things. Now, frankly, a tow truck has been discussed for a long time and is something that I think has a lot of value. Most importantly, when persistence is more of a factor. Now, is it worth the $130 or $150? I think the answer is probably a yes if you're interested in playing this type of support role, but only if you have another ship, because I think the lack of weapons is concerning, and the fact that I have concerns about its cargo ability being really limited to the exterior part and probably being susceptible to distortion weapons. So, can you get by with this as your only ship? Probably, but will it be easy? Probably not. Overall, I think it's a cool ship, it's a good gameplay mechanic, and I think the price is fair, so it gets a thumbs up from me if you fit those needs, but I would say it's more specific to those that want this ship as a supplemental craft to something else that you already have in your fleet. So that's going to be it for this video. If you guys have questions or comments, please get them in the sections below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for a lot more coming soon, and have yourselves a wonderful day. Take care.